This is Natural Powerlifting Radio. Deadlifts, chicken nuggets, video games. This is Check My Total, a powerlifting podcast with Timothy Payne and Andrew Hinson.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Check My Total podcast, the only podcast where you will get unadulterated content in the lifting world. So we got the duo here. What are we talking about?
We're going to talk about volume today. How much volume does a powerlifter actually need?
How much volume you need in training? How much does it take? What is it? Things of that nature. So,
well, let's start there. What is volume? When somebody says volume, what are we talking about?
Talking about the amount of weights and like tonnage that you're moving in a session. Talking about how much work you're doing when you go to the gym, kind of. Not really about not how much weight is on the bar, but just how many times you're moving something, how many sets, how many reps.
Yeah. When I think about volume, it's usually in terms of sets and reps in my brain.
Yeah, it's sets and reps. Some people, do sets of reps times weight, and you get total amount of whatever you did for the day, tonnage, weight moved.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. We're going to talk about I think a lot of people have some misconceptions on how to get stronger, how to use volume in the appropriate way, and I think a lot of people get kind of hung up on that. You hear a lot of like, oh, I'm doing high volume, I'm doing low volume, I'm doing medium volume. Like, what is that? What does any of that actually even mean? How does it play in? How does it relate to each other? Does it make you stronger? So I would start off by saying that volume is something that there is no magic number that you need to. There's no magic rep scheme or set scheme that you need to be doing. It's kind of a little different for everyone else. But I would say this, that over the course of years lifting, your volume should go up. Like, you should start out, like if you took like a 10-year lifter and you look at his volume now compared to when he began, it should be a lot higher. The amount of work that he is able to do.
Because the idea behind that is, as you lift and get stronger, then you have to do more to even, gain 5 pounds on your total.
Yep. And so it's now that's in a yearly perspective. What I don't mean is your volume doesn't have to increase month by month. Like, you don't have to do more volume next month than you do this month. Because that's not really how the human body works. Like, if you can always add and increase, then everyone would be squatting 800 pounds.
You got that right.
So it doesn't have to be on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. But over the course of years, your volume should probably increase.
And your conditioning should be better too, to where you can handle the volume.
Yeah, definitely.
But for the sake of this podcast and what we're trying to argue, how much volume do you need just to get strong?
Well, I would say I would start with, you have your minimum, right? Like, you have this bar, and it's like, what can you do even on a crappy day? So I think you start off at wherever you start, your baseline. Through your training, that kind of baseline increases over your training. So, like, let's say you can always squat 135. Well, after 5 months of training, let's say even if you got the flu, your minimum is now like, oh, I can squat 185, no problem, even on a terrible day if I'm puking my guts out. And as far as how much you need to achieve that, I mean, it's kind of almost like you have to find this line because too much volume will kill you,
Right.
and too little you won't get stronger. So it's almost like you have to find out how much volume you can do and still recover from and keep getting stronger. So it's almost like this concept of what's the least amount of work required to get stronger?
Right.
What is the least amount? Because a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, you just go super hard in the gym," and it's like, yeah, I mean, you do when you're at the gym, you need to work, but um, if you go crazy with it and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to the gym 6 times a week, training 6 times," well, then you kind of work yourself into a corner. It's like, well, when your body gets used to that, where do you go? Do you're training 7 times a week, like eight times a week, like, and there's diminishing returns with that as well. Like, if you just keep training more and more and more, you don't get as much out of it, and you just increase risk of injury or overtraining.
And as a
So
power lifter, you're generally staying between 65 and 85% of your max, I would say, while you're training.
yeah,
Because powerlifting, low rep, high weight. So most of the time, powerlifting, you're going to be doing fives, 5 sets of 5.
yeah,
And the goal is when you're doing these 5 sets of 5 is to get as close to your breaking point as you can. So, for example, if I'm doing squats and my 5 5s, which I'm going to pretend like I'm strong right now, if my 5 5s is 500 pounds, then that means on my 5th set that 500 pounds, that my 5th rep should be the hardest rep out of all of them. And sometimes on your 5th set, you might only get 3 reps or 4 reps. Well, anyways, you're taking it to that brink on your heavy day every week.
yeah,
So volume wise, depending on your sets and reps, you got to keep in mind that this is taking you to the brink every week.
yep.
So
And
if you go ahead.
based on that, it's like that's what makes you stronger is going to that limit you have. When you're right at that limit, and you're like, all right, I'm done, I'm toast, I'm out. But like when you're at that limit, you stop. You don't keep going. You don't. Oh, I only got 3 reps on my last set, so let me do another set and get the last 2 or the last 3, and let me do another set and get another 5. Let's lower the weight. No, once you're done, you're done.
Because a
Oh,
lot of people, this is kind of a whole different podcast, but you'll have your program written out on your, sheet of notebook paper, and people think you have to get exactly what's written down on your notebook paper to succeed. And
yeah.
lifting isn't like that at all. Your program is more like a guideline than it is something you have to hit every single workout.
Yep. And people think it's like magic. Like if someone hires a strength coach for a program, they think that sheet of paper is magic and has so much intelligence behind it, and the volume is just 100% correct. And if I do everything this thing says, I'll get stronger. Well, that's just not the case at all. Like at all.
And depending on what kind of lifter you are and where you're at in your journey, if that paper says you got to do 6 sets of 8 with, 70% of your max, and all you can do is 3 sets of 8, then clearly that's way too much volume for you.
Yeah. And it's that brink. So like someone that's beginning, their limit is lower than someone who's more experienced. So, you know, four sets of 4 might be all they can do, and that's all that their body can take for that one day and still recover from. And if you keep pushing it beyond, they'll just get injured, or they'll just feel worse, or they won't want to go to the gym the rest of the week because they're burnt out.
Right.
And so the amount of volume you should do is whatever kind of takes you to limit that you have, but whatever that limit is, it is still something that you can definitely recover from. And whenever you kind of you'll figure this out when more you train, but when you push it more, when you try and push a little bit more, and then the rest of your workouts, the rest of the week are crap, or the next week is just crap, well, you probably you found something good. You found that you did a little bit too much, and that you can't recover efficiently from whatever work you did the past week. And so you can kind of take that and be like, all right, well, at least for now, I probably don't need to do more than, 10 sets of squats per week at 80% or whatever it is. Yeah, that's kind of how you have to approach it.
Our goal for every training session is to put 5 pounds on the bar more than what you did last week.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, we're generally doing the same exercise only 2 weeks in a row. So, for example, if we're doing 5 sets of 5, we'll do that 2 weeks in a row with the same exercise.
Yeah.
So, if it's flat bench, we're doing 5 sets of 5 on flat bench 2 weeks in a row. Then that third week, we might do 3 sets of 3, and we'll do that for 2 weeks. So, like Andrew was saying, if that first week beats you up, then the second week, instead of adding 5 pounds, we'll just, use the same weight and hope it goes better. Or sometimes we'll even, subtract 5 pounds off the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it all depends on your capacity at the time. But I think the overall philosophy with this is kind of doing, like Andrew said, the least amount you could do to get stronger. Because when you think about it, your workouts aren't really changing. The only, variable changing is the weight. So let's say beginning out, you're doing 5 sets of 5 with 315. Well, over the course of time, 6 months or so, that 315 might end up becoming your, 4 sets of 8 because you're getting stronger, which means, your 5 sets of 5 might be bumped up to, like 330 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you're doing the same workouts. It's just you're getting stronger, so the bar weight is moving upward.
Yeah. And I don't really, when someone says they're doing higher volume or lower volume, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, to me it's more like it's kind of all the same to me. Like, I don't really, unless I'm like going to a competition, like my volume isn't necessarily high or low. It's generally like I'm just keeping going towards the limit for that day, whatever my body can take. And if I'm going to a competition, then it is a little bit more low volume because I don't need to be doing a lot of stuff when I'm about to do a 1 rep max. I gotta go a little bit lower so I can recover. The higher volume stuff, like if you say high volume, like think a competition mindset, that's when you're building your muscle and getting stronger and building your squat, bench, and deadlift.
Right.
And then low volume is generally when you're getting ready for competition. And then if it's your off season, it's kind of just like there's not really a point in doing some like crazy low volume in your off season unless you're doing some mock meet or like you're just taking a deload week or you're just resting or something.
I might stay in the 3 rep range if, off season maybe once a month or maybe once every 2 months just to keep your nervous system in check. Because you don't want to, lose all that, I guess you could call it stamina almost or endurance. Anyways, for anybody that's lifted for a while and quit lifting and went back to lifting, your nervous system, even with weight that you've handled before, will go, whoa, now this is heavy. So it's usually good to do something heavy, every month or every 2 months just to keep that in check. So you're not getting overloaded whenever you step back under something heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But usually when I hear high volume, And like I said earlier, 65% is usually your starting point, your bottom if you're doing low volume. I would say if you're doing high volume, 65% is actually the top percentage that you're doing because you're doing more reps.
Yeah.
High volume is more, like Andrew said earlier, to build muscle, and it's almost more like bodybuilding than it is actually powerlifting.
Yeah, it really is. And it's also, you kind of have to take this approach of like volume's calculated by a lot of people, sets times reps times weight, but that's not necessarily the best way. Some people, like, you can't, I don't really know how to explain it, but you have to kind of count. The only volume I count is the working set stuff, like the stuff that you're actually trying for. Like,
Right.
I don't ever add up or consider my warm up as part of my volume for the week or day. Like, it's not like I write down, I actually did 7 sets of squats, but the first 4 were just 135, 225, just warming up to whatever I'm doing.
Because theoretically, your warm up should be something you do every single day. It shouldn't take anything out of you.
Yeah, you're just breaking a little sweat, getting comfortable, getting the kinks worked out. So, like, yeah, I don't consider that as part of your volume. And then I would say the other thing is like more volume. Generally, if you want to like get stronger or you realize that you're kind of plateauing, more volume sometimes is the answer, but it's not always the answer. And it also depends on what you mean by more volume. Like if more is not always better. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing 10 hard sets of bench press for the whole week. Like that's what you've done. You're used to doing 10 hard sets of bench pressing. And you realize that you're plateauing. You're not getting stronger just doing 10 sets. Well, you could up it to 11, 12, 13 sets a week. But you're still benching. And your body's kind of got used to that. You got used to the movement. So, like, you have diminishing returns when you keep trying to just plow on more sets and more sets. So, one thing to do is, like we were saying, you're working to your brink. And so, like, let's say you bench twice a week and you do 10 hard sets. Well, one thing you could do is, one perspective is, well, really, you could break it up. You could even do 3 days a week bench pressing, but still do 10 sets, but spread them out between 3 days. I've actually found that it helps recover more and you generally get more practice in with the lift. Or if you're growing stagnant with the bench press, then maybe adding on an extra day or adding on more sets is not the answer. Maybe you just need to switch it up completely and do like a different accessory work or a different rep and set scheme, a different percentage, incline press or something. Like Timmy was saying, you kind of switch it up every 2 weeks when we were going up to the mountain and stuff.
Yeah. Generally, when I think of plateauing, and if somebody is plateauing, it's finding out what exactly your weakness is. Like, why are you staying at the same spot? So, and to kind of piggyback off of what Andrew said, when you are plateauing, I think it's actually better to go backwards, like not add more sets and reps, but to maybe take some off. Because if you're plateauing, then I don't think you're getting your recuperation in. Or, like I said, you have some kind of weakness that you need to work on. Which, if that's the case, then you do like what Andrew said and add in a different accessory work to fix that weakness. Like, for example, if you're having trouble locking it out at the top and you never train your triceps, then maybe you need to start training your triceps.
Yeah.
But if it isn't that and you're just kind of hanging around the same spot, then you definitely have to change something up. It's kind of like what they say about, crazy or insane people. It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if you're doing 10 hard sets of bench pressing a week, well, and it's getting easier on you, then either one, you make sets harder by increasing the weight. This is assuming that you have something like your technique's on point and you don't really have a weakness. It's like you just need to get stronger or something.
All right.
But like if you either increase the weight so your sets don't become as easy, and if they're still hard, then either breaking it up. I've had success breaking it up into multiple days. Either you kind of just do the same amount of work, but you spread it out between every day, and you generally kind of focus on your bench press more in those days, and you have a little bit more accessory. You can kind of divvy up your accessory work a little different instead of lumping it all in 2 days. And it's kind of like if you can only do so much in one day.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do so much in one day and get it without spending hours and hours in the gym or just diminishing returns start happening. But most of the time, if you are plateauing, you either need to increase your volume, like the work you do, or you just need to increase your volume in a different way with like a different exercise. So like you probably don't do a ton of incline benching. So you should probably do some incline benching if like just to switch it up.
Yep. So to kind of wrap this all up, depending on how many working sets you have, how many accessories do you think somebody should do?
So you should probably.
Let's say we're doing 5 sets of 5 on just regular flat bench. And then once we're done with those working sets, what should we do?
Your accessories should probably revolve around making the 3 main lifts easier and getting better at your 3 main lifts. So if it's the bench press and you're doing 5 sets of 5, after you're done, you got to kind of be like, all right, is there an area that I really suck at in the bench press? If it is a tricep thing, tricep extensions. A lot of your bench press is your back, so some back work would also be handy. But probably 2 to 4 accessories. Generally, if I'm doing 5 sets of 5, I'm pretty beat and pretty worn out. So I generally do about 2, maybe 3.
Okay.
I never really do that 4th one.
I agree with all of that. But if you're one of these people that go to the gym on a separate day to do your accessories, then I think it's fine to do more than 4. But if you're trying to do everything on the same day, then I wouldn't go over 4. Because like the name of this podcast, your volume, it's going to be too high, and I think you're going to start overtraining.
Yep. And like volume is kind of what drives your progression like over time. So it's a very important thing that you need to be increasing your volume, you need to be working hard, but you also need to know what to do when you plateau. And taking like some time off and of a lift and coming back to it. There's a lot of studies that show, your muscles grow more when you like take a couple of weeks off of flat benching and you go back to flat benching. Because your body is not used to it as much. So you kind of get a little bit more progress that way. And then another thing is, if you're in off season and you're just training to kind of train, and it's a good time to work on a bunch of weaknesses, you don't want to completely not bench, not squat or deadlift, because you don't want to lose the technique or the skill that you've gained. So in an off season, your volume should, what I do is, maybe 2 to 4 sets of something in the 75 to 80% zone, and the rest of it can be higher volume on accessories that I don't normally do, or like variations that I don't normally do, like a safety bar squat or something like that. You don't want to ever lose your deadlift technique or squat technique or bench press technique.
Yeah, you gotta keep your tools sharp.
Yep. So, yeah, to sum it up, if your workouts are too easy and you're not seeing progress, work a little harder. If it's too hard and you're plateauing and adding sets is not the answer, then change your exercises. Do some variations. It's
Yeah,
not
buddy.
it ain't rocket science.
A lot of people like to make it rocket science, though.
They do. I'll tell you what, it's like
Ugh.
all these people. I remember when when RPE became really big. I did this at RPE 7, RPE 8. I still think the RPE term is the most ridiculous term. Rate of perceived exhaustion. All it is how hard is this on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all that is how hard is it on a scale of 1 to 10? People have been working out like that forever.
It's just another term for percentages.
Yeah, it's another term for percentage. And people are like, oh, no, it's not percentages. I'm like, give or take.
I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, Andrew and I will say percentages all the time just so it's easier to convey what we're trying to say. But we never go into the gym and say, hey, we're doing 80% today. We go into the gym saying, hey, we're doing five sets of 5. So in our brain, we're trying to figure out what's the heaviest I can do 5 sets of 5 with. It's not necessarily, 80% of my max is 275, so I'm doing 275. If I'm feeling good that day and I can do 290 for 5 sets of 5, then you need to do 290.
Yep.
And, the next week, like I said, if you're feeling rough, you might have to do 275. But
exactly.
It's
and
all...
Go
ahead. I was just going to say, it's all a day-by-day thing, lifting weights. It's all about how you feel.
It is all about how you feel. But you also don't want to go so hard and be like on 5x5. Like, if you can do 295, but it's going to kill you for next week, and you'll be completely broken, and you won't be able to train that lift anymore for the rest of the week, and you probably don't need to go that high. That's like going 100% on a 5x5.
Fall somewhere in the middle and do like 285.
Exactly, and leave yourself some room for next week to improve on, and just kind of see how it goes. But it's almost like you're combining the two. Like it's kind of like we combine this RPE scale and percentages kind of into just basically how do I feel this day? What's smart for the training cycle? Do I have a competition coming up? Do I need to really blow out everything I got and go all out on this, or do I need to conserve a little bit?
And sometimes that's the hardest thing about lifting weights is thinking about tomorrow or what you're doing next week.
Yeah.
A lot of times you want to blow it out that day, but recovery you could argue is more important than going to the gym and lifting weights.
Yeah, you definitely could make that argument. Because, I mean, you're just going to the gym and breaking yourself down. If you never recover, you just get weaker.
Yeah, you get stronger outside the gym, which a lot of people may not know.
You go to the gym to get weak, and then you go home to get stronger.
Yep. But hey, that's about all I got to say on this thing.
Yep. So that's really just kind of an introduction on how you can use volume in your training, and what it kind of means. So, with that episode, that's a wrap. Episode 51 is up for grabs. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you're going to the gym and you're thinking about yourself, think about how hard can you work that day, and think about, can I work harder? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to work smarter? Do I need to change it up? Do I need to start paying my taxes? I haven't fed my kid in 9 weeks because I've been in the gym thinking about, 2 sets of 2 or 3 sets. It don't matter. It don't matter. Do the work. Do the work. Do the work and show up in the gym and do something with your life. I'm tired of all this. RPE 7. No, it wasn't RPE 7. You struggled to your face is ready to look. You're about to pass out. That's not our fee. I'm tired of all this crap. It's work. You do your volume. I'm just going off right now. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. I'll see you. Shoot some steroids up your butt, people. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of here.
But don't really do that.
Yeah, don't really do that.
We're drug free on this podcast.
Don't actually do that.
Nugs over drugs. Anyways, we're out of here. Peace. Up next is the IBP Tar Heel State Powerlifting Championships in Belmont, North Carolina on April 20th. For more details about the competition, go to ironboypowerlifting.com.
Please subscribe and thank you for listening. Be sure to follow @CheckMyTotal on Instagram for all the latest updates.